Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Wollmann. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode, a very special episode of Between Two Chairs. My name is Fernando Arencibia Jr., and with me, as always, is our rock star, Jennifer Wollmann. Jennifer, say hi.
Hi, everybody. I always wait for him to come up with these words because I never know what he's going to come up with. So rock star works for me.
That's
today.
why it works. You like it, I know.
It works for me today because of our guest. We have an amazing guest. I'm so excited to have her here. She is Thea Goldman. She is a broker associate with Compass and specializes in Coconut Grove. But the reason she's here today is because she's actually a trailblazer in neighborhood redevelopment. And she is one of the most amazing people I know at coming up with ideas to ignite neighborhoods. And we have had so many conversations about different areas in Miami. And so I thought she's the perfect person, and she's a podcaster herself. Her podcast is called Thea's Neighborhood Magic, and she has a line in it that I love. I just love this line. Ever wonder how a place goes from not to hot? And if anyone knows the answer to that, it is definitely Thea. She owned and operated the first restaurant in Wynwood, which everybody knows set that off. She also created and founded the Women of Wynwood, the Wynwood Arts District Association, and then she went on and did something similar in Allapattah. And her story is so amazing, and I love her accent. So instead of having her introduce herself, I'm going to play the beginning of her story in her own words here.
Hi, I'm Thea. Everyone said I was crazy when I opened the first restaurant in a desolate Miami warehouse district. Now the whole world knows that as Wynwood. Then I did it again in Allapattah. Ever wonder how a place goes from not to hot? Join me for a behind-the-scenes look at what really goes into igniting a neighborhood. We'll talk with the risk takers, the pioneers, the restaurateurs, the real sparks of neighborhood ignition. This is Thea's Neighborhood Magic.
All right. So Thea, welcome to Between Two Chairs. We are so excited you are joining us.
Jennifer, I'm thrilled to see you. Fernando, thank you so much for having me on. I love the show.
We are honored, definitely.
So let's start with how you went into each of these areas and started by repurposing underutilized properties. What attracted you to these areas in the first place? Give us a little bit of a background.
Well, I was in a family business, and we were in the acquisition phase of purchasing the warehouse district. And we had gone through a prolonged period of acquisitions and rezoning for the warehouse district to change it from a factory use to an entertainment district. And every time we would go in front of the city, as I'm sure that you've experienced many times, anybody new or any kind of change is greeted most of the time with a lot of resentment. Even if it promises something good for everybody, change is usually reacted to with dislike and fear. And so I would watch these city commission meetings, and I realized how disliked we were as the developer from the get-go. And so I thought, if we ever manage to get Wynwood rezoned and changed into an entertainment district, we have to set about making a plan to really ingratiate ourselves with the community. And so successfully and fortunately, Wynwood and the city, and there were a lot of people who came together to rezone Wynwood. even if we were, the team driving it. And Wynwood was assigned its liquor licenses. And at that time, you may have some memory that 2007, 2008, there was this whole real estate crisis that was looming over us. And so the thought that somebody was going to come in and open a business in a desolate industrial factory district and say, hey, I'm going to invest in the streetscape and the pipes under the streets and make something happen in the largest financial crisis, in recent memory, was a stretch. And so I understood that I had to take that on. And we had one property that was off the beaten path, that was this forgotten, complicated artery, Northwest 2nd Avenue. And 5th Avenue was meant to be this beautiful boulevard that was meant to be the center of Wynwood. But I thought, as a kind of starter process, we could start with this little corner. It was the only corner that had a grease trap because it had been a Cuban cafe with a mattress in the back. Side hustle. So I set about changing that into what I thought should be a cafe for Wynwood. And that's ultimately what became the igniting restaurant for the Wynwood Arts District.
What was the name of the cafe for our long timers?
It is called Joey's. And I thought that was a name that sounded like a very approachable name. It was my husband's name. My husband at the time, it was his name. And I thought it was a very funny thing because it sounds like this Italian guy who makes pizza. And so I knew I didn't want to call it Thea's. I was going to go on and do Thea's. And we had been the, detested developer. And so I thought, hey, we'll be right here. As it turned out, I was the one who was right there. And so everybody started calling me Joey. So my name changed. It was pretty funny for a long time. And so this little restaurant was the restaurant that could. It was a remarkable moment.
I wonder, before we get into, obviously we're talking about a story of great success. What were those first weeks once you opened Joey's? What were those things?
Yeah, I would change that phraseology, and I would say it was a story of great desperation, Fernando. When that real estate crisis was coming, it affected everybody in such monumental ways. I know that you two know that. And so to find a moment of hope and optimism to produce or generate anything that might encourage people to move into a forlorn industrial district, I think that desperation was my driver. There was no option not to do it. We would have sunk and taken a lot of people down with us. And that really kept me awake at night. We had gone in front of the city of Miami and promised a lot of people, hey, we're bringing an arts district. There are artists and there are people there, and there were lots of people there before us. Like, I can't say that enough. But as Avra Jane said on my show a couple weeks ago, there's always a tipping point. And so that restaurant was a tipping point, but it was truly desperation that drove me, just thinking, I got to do this. I got to at least try.
So why did you start with a restaurant, right? Because restaurants are so cash intensive, like they scare a lot of people. The margins aren't right. It can be very hit or miss. So here you are talking about the great financial crisis. You're talking about all this fear you have, and then you go open one of the most difficult. So why restaurants for both of your plays here?
Because restaurants are integral to the ignition of a neighborhood. You never go into a new neighborhood because of a dry cleaner. You never say, hey, I'm going to that new neighborhood because there's an amazing dentist, right? You say, I will venture into the unknown, into the uncharted territory because of a new restaurant. So a restaurant has a tremendous magical pull that will populate the most deserted, dangerous, desolate streets. And so I knew I had to do that, and I had to create something so compelling that not only serviced our immediate neighbors, but drew people from around the city, ended up drawing people from around the world before the city, because the city had preconceived ideas about this neighborhood, Wynwood. But a restaurant has magical powers to do that. It also creates sound and conversation and pedestrian life where there is silence and desolation. So it had to be a restaurant, but it had to be a very powerful restaurant that fit the moment, that fit the people, that fit the landscape. So that was really a dream that came to me.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. It's fodder for conversation, especially once if you hit the right tones and people go and they have an incredible experience. It doesn't matter where it is; it becomes part of the conversation. Have you gone to this great place? And sometimes there is a level of excitement about the fact that it is in a far off place. How many times have you heard stories about these little hole in the wall? And people always like to tell you it's a little hole in the wall, but it's amazing food or it's great people.
Yes.
So
because there is a sense of adventure in all of that. And so
right.
it's a double-edged sword, because yes, it's extremely exciting. You've discovered something and then you want to bring everybody. And then a lot of that is extremely off-putting to a lot of the population. My God, I'm not going to. Our PR lady at the time said to me, I don't want to come to your opening because I'm not going to risk my life because of your crazy idea. That was our own public relations person.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it was not, I would say, an easy idea for a lot of people. But the people who did get it and the people who did come and the people who were there generated I just provided the backdrop, but they really generated an extraordinary momentum. And that was very exciting.
I think that's amazing, and you're spot on. I remember the design district went through the same thing. The MIMO district went through the same thing. I mean, I remember when Miami Beach, when I came to visit my parents here in the 80s, and the Miami Beach was a horrible place to go. It's nothing what it is today. And I remember, especially in the design district, I can't remember, it might have been Michael's Genuine, but a restaurant opened.
I remember, I think it was Soika. When Soika opened, it was also, there was really nothing around it.
People, to your point, would say, oh, great restaurant, but your windows might get broken, while you're there. But what you're saying is so true about it igniting. So I'm curious. You said that you had to go through and change the use. Did you change the use, the zoning for the entire area?
Yes.
Or were you doing it?
Yes.
So by the time you opened the restaurant, you were already okay you didn't have to go through another zoning change.
So what had happened was, the idea was that Wynwood would change into a cafe district. It was called the Cafe District. And so it had to be zoned for entertainment. And there were liquor licenses assigned to the district, 22 liquor licenses assigned to the district. And we were denied. We worked with an excellent zoning attorney, Alex Takmas, and we went through that process for a great long period. And if it hadn't been for the tremendous mayor at the time, Manny Diaz, who's been on my show a couple of times since, and this partnership that we had with the city and with the neighbors. And it was a moment in time in Miami's history where they were very pro advancement and growth. So there were a lot of people involved in this, even if we were, spearheading this. And so Wynwood had to change from being a factory district into a cafe district. The liquor licenses were announced. And the first liquor license was bought by Yvette Naranjo, who is one of my idols, who I have an episode on, who owned a carpet warehouse around the corner from where Joey's is. And Yvette is one of the most brilliant entrepreneurs. And Yvette saw it in the newspaper announced, and she went out. She was sitting at City Hall trying to get some kind of permit for the warehouse. And she said, you know what? I need one of those. And she bought one and made her backyard into a bar. And that opened about a year after I'd opened Joey's. We only had a beer and wine license. But when the liquor licenses were announced, I knew that if we didn't come out swinging with some operation, after all these years of promising what we were going to do, you could have an entire neighborhood collapse under the weight of that financial pressure and under the weight of nothingness. So we really did have to be the ones who led the way. And at the time, there was no one else here. It had to be me, and I had a little 8-year-old helper, my son. And so that's really how it came about.
I just love this so much, because I'll tell you honest, I was having a conversation with someone yesterday about what has happened in Wynwood over the years. And obviously people only focus on where it is today. And what I'm hearing from your voice is the absolute incredible effort and really betting on yourself and betting on an idea of transformation that is so important. And then when you tell the story, I'm so glad you mentioned, Mayor Manny Diaz, because I remember, reading his book, and he receives a note from, at the time, Mayor Bloomberg from New York, who tells him, if you have a bold idea and you want to do something transformative, do it in your first year, because you don't know what you don't know. And the fact that we are going through this transformation from the 1100 code to Miami 21, and to really fostering this concept of the zoning and planning departments, is where it's really the epitome of change within a city that now has to evolve. We have to grow from being infants into adulthood. And this push is happening at the same time that you have people like your family that is coming in and looking at a neighborhood that really, I think people who grew up in Miami only remember the riots in Wynwood. For a long time, that was kind of the preeminent vision that they had about that place. And then to see this transformation, it's incredibly inspirational, not only from a business perspective, but really from a personal perspective, that anything can be transformed.
That's why I like these stories, and that's why I host my show, because I see that, and it's really almost like these frontier stories, these amazing stories where people go into these uncharted neighborhoods and they have a kernel of an idea. And, again, it's never one person you need, or you're just working in a vacuum. It creates an energy and it transforms the neighborhoods we live in. Having done it repeatedly now, there is a roadmap to that. What was remarkable about Wynwood was, out of desperation, true desperation, we created something that was so powerful. In my first couple of days, I'd built this place. I'd been hanging out in Wynwood for about 10 years by that point, I want to say, maybe 6 years by that point. 2002, 2008, we opened. And so I had been there on these desolate streets, and I loved the quiet of it, and I loved the people who were there, and I loved the romance of it. I grew up going to these places in these effed up neighborhoods and just thought it was very exciting theater to be able to create this on these blank canvas kind of streets. But by the time we got there, once I opened, desperation had just become isolation. And my first couple of days, I sat in that restaurant so alone. I mean, I can't even tell you how quiet it was. Quiet in my head, quiet in the restaurant, quiet everywhere. And I thought, I need friends. I need to make friends. And so I had watched my father-in-law create business improvement districts and basically say to the neighbors, hey, listen, if we get together, we're going to do better. And so I was like, okay, I've watched this. I need to do this. And so I said to the guy opposite, David Lombardi, hey, David, we need to be friends. We need to do this. And then he told a few people, and we created, the Wynwood Arts District Association that was so grassroots that if I tell you, I door knocked and got everyone in the neighborhood to contribute $220. That was the ask. And we started with 7 people. We went to the next level. We had to keep changing the meeting place because we got bigger and bigger and bigger. But the strength in numbers, and I cannot stress it enough, make friends in these neighborhoods. See what your neighbors need. See what you can do for your neighbors. See what they can do for you. Create a kind of nexus where everybody's working together. And that was the Wynwood Arts District Association. That became a formal business improvement district, which is what you know it as today.
So when you look at Wynwood and all these other neighborhoods where you've had an incredible impact, are you seeing it as I'm enhancing what I see here that nobody else sees? There's a flavor to the neighborhood. There's an essence here. And what we want to do is enhance it. And then other people come in and kind of bring in their own flavor and it makes it what it is today.
I would say I feel more humble about it, Fernando. I feel like, wow, this is really a very exciting place. I would love to be part of it. And that's how I feel. And that's how I felt in Wynwood. And I think it came across. I wanted to ingratiate myself with the neighbors. My immediate neighbor was a metal worker. There were body shops. There is no point in me standing in Wynwood and looking across to Miami Beach and going, hey, I hope you people from Miami Beach come over here. I was like, Blandon Metal Shop, I hope you would consider coming in here because I'm hoping you're going to be my friend because I need you as my friend. And so it was a very humble approach. And I felt that in Alapata as well. You're very honored by anybody that will partner with you by buying a sandwich, come in, give you the time of day. So that was how I felt. I can't speak for the rest of the people I was working with, but that's how I felt.
So that leads to kind of this crazy juxtaposition, right? So you're excited by the neighborhood, you're excited by the energy and what you feel, and the metal worker and the shops that are already there and the furniture stores, etc.
No stores, no furniture
not stores. I meant the warehouses, the
completely closed doors.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're coming into an area that's one thing that energizes you, but you're taking it to a much more energetic level by rezoning into an entertainment district. So what happened to all of these people who became your friends in the process?
So they all, if they owned the real estate, they did extremely well.
Right.
The guy who owned the plumbing supply store found untold riches. It was the artists who were all there and all the people who were there, which I'm sure this is where you're going, is who was displaced and who wasn't displaced and who did well. The reality is Wynwood was an industrial neighborhood. It was not the part of Wynwood that had residents in it. Anybody that knows Miami understands this is straight industrial district. So we lived in harmony with the industrial neighbors for a long time. Look, growth happens. Artists don't want to be around anything happening commercial either. So they tend to move out. They're the first in. They were there before anybody. Growth is inevitable. A lot of people benefited and a city benefited.
Correct. And we've had this conversation before because I love the fact that there's a roadmap that you so clearly state, right, in terms of building these places and igniting these places and helping spark the change. But then there's also, and we were talking about this the other day, like the example of Miami Beach and Lincoln Road, right? How it almost became a victim of its own success, right? Because what made Lincoln Road so great. So now, how do you feel about Wynwood today? I mean, it's this amazing, vibrant, full of life and restaurants and creatives and techies. How does Wynwood protect itself from?
I don't think that's the conversation. I don't think there's protecting to be had. I think there are new frontiers to be found. If that is the growth cycle that people end up creating something different, it's not the Wynwood that I knew. It's this vibrant, amazing hub, a different kind of hub. But that period of growth, it's like saying, will somebody stay a toddler forever? They won't. It was a privilege just to be there at that moment of inception and have any role in it. But there are new frontiers, and that's, if people want that feeling, they should go off and look for those.
Right. And I think it's more the becoming victim of its own success that I was thinking about, right? Is that you get so popular, like what makes it cool are, Wynwood was the home to so many startups, right? I mean, you think of Salty Donut, you think of a lot of the restaurants that started there, right? But now it's so popular, our chain's going to start coming in and displacing those locals and all that. So it's more just part of the cycle.
Well, the part of the cycle is getting high on your own supply, right? This is going to last forever. We're the hottest girl in town. That's part of the cycle. And greed,
it's part of
the thing. Yeah. If I can get this per square foot, can I get this? Yeah. And what ultimately happens, which is not an idea I've come up with, it happens everywhere, is the very good tenants can't afford to pay the rent that very less attractive tenants can pay. And so you end up creating neighborhoods that feel like kind of multi-headed monsters. And that's part of the cycle. And that's why people leave and find other places. But
No, go ahead, please.
You two are really experts in commercial real estate. And, I know about the ignition side of it and that energy center, but you two are really experts in what you do. And I had very much wanted to ask you both in regards to going into new neighborhoods. There's a lot of change of use that happens. And I don't think there are enough conversations about the complexities and change of use and how people can really spread their wings, ignite new areas, bring services and life to areas that didn't have anything there before. So I would love your take on those steps and how that happens and why people should be going into other neighborhoods, getting more involved in change of use.
So I love that you asked that. I literally have, what steps did you go through to change the use? What obstacles did you face and how did you overcome them?
Every single one, everything, all of them and more.
And then what recommendations do you have for cities to help with the process? Because that's something that we see all the time. Yeah. And we didn't do anything. Most of what we work on is not as massive as changing the zoning for an entire neighborhood, right? It's change of use for one building or for, one condo.
Well, so, I think change of use for one building is much more relevant to the person listening because those are the people that will likely go out and do that. Zoning is done by very proficient zoning attorneys. No one can pretend that you can have an idea, but that's, a long process that zoning attorneys do. So nobody in this conversation is claiming to have done that.
Right.
The zoning attorneys that, you hire do that. But if there is an operator or an investor who wants to go and change the use of a building in Miami Beach, there is a certain roadmap that you two know very well how you would advise somebody to go and do that and what the issues that they would look out for is what I'm very interested in, because I think that will help neighborhoods a lot.
Yeah, I think if you start from the premise that really the value of the property or the value of the land, it's its highest and best use. The thing that is exciting is when you're speaking to someone that has the creativity to think, this is not the best use for this land. There's an opportunity here. And for years, we've spoken about adaptive reuse components in the real estate cycle and how important that is. And, what I would say is a lot of the same things that I think you would agree with is that if you want to do a change of use that is out of the norm for the character of the neighborhood, right, or the potential of that neighborhood, then it kind of becomes a non-starter. You're going to just hit a wall. If you have an idea that is really going to be part of the fabric of the neighborhood, right, and is really going to provide, more importantly, a service that is in high demand that people have to travel far away to actually get, that's where you're going to find, it's still going to be a difficult process with any municipality. We got 47 municipalities in Dade County. You have to deal with Dade County. You have to deal with the specificities of each municipality. It's not going to be easy, but you are going to find yourself on a path to success if you're able to make the argument that I am providing a service that is in high demand where people have to actually leave their neighborhoods to get. And those are the conversations that really excites us, is when somebody has an idea. And I've had conversations with investors that have looked at properties that have that flexibility. It could be one thing, it could be another, without much of a significant effort. And once they look at the use, and I'll give you an example, there were some multifamily these properties in North Beach that were converted into hotels. The problem was that you had limited number of keys. You had 10, 18 units. And so what the operators decided to do is they converted it into a hotel. They created a restaurant in the rear. The restaurant became very popular. It was really the economic force of that specific property. And then they were always full, but they were lamenting that there were not enough units. And then I had a client that was buying the place next door. Well, we already had a relationship with this operator. And I said, well, what if you look at these 18 units that now you're looking at, the price is a little high. Why don't you look at them as an additional 18 keys for this hotel next door? Make a deal with the hotel operator. Well, the numbers totally changed. And he went on and he purchased the property because he was excited for that collaboration. And so things like that, I think, are important. But I've had conversations with people that want to do something that it's totally out of the norm and doesn't really add value because it doesn't satisfy a need that the neighborhood has, right? And I think that is really the start of the conversation. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's a big part of the conversation.
I think that we have pockets in every city that could do with more life. And I think that you have creative people and moneyed people that want to get into it. And then I think that we have a massive fall into an abyss between those elements that have to do with change of use, zoning, city. You could have a retail space that really should be a restaurant because retail is hurting. Yeah. But cities make it so complicated, so expensive, so precarious that they are hurting the business, which is the city, that they're supposed to be running in the first place. So I think that is something that people like us, the three of us, need to bring to the forefront and just drive this conversation to try to make this easier, to save so many streets and so many neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So I think you bring up a good point, because for me, the change of use issue is more, is it a permitted use per zoning? Is it a restricted use per zoning? Am I going to have to go to a hearing to change the use? If it's a permitted use, it's easier to do. Then what you're dealing with the city is more the permitting, what Fernando was talking about, the proof of concept and the costs associated. Like, changing a retail space to a restaurant space is outrageously expensive. Some cities are going to charge impact fees. You're going to have to put in a grease trap. That's outrageously expensive. Who does that fall on, right? So I think that the whole change of use process really depends on the city that you're working in. We know some cities that anytime, whether it's a change of use or a development, that you have an idea, you go and you take your plans. So City of Miami Gardens is one of them. You take your plans, you sit down, you have a meeting with everybody who's going to have any say whatsoever in that deal.
That's Miami Gardens?
Miami Gardens. And they tell you right then and there, this isn't going to pass fire. This isn't going to pass.
Wow.
But more importantly, it gives the opportunity for the developer to actually share the vision with every department all at once. Right. And so that and then to get feedback from the department, well, I would have a concern over this, or I would have a concern over that. So it gives the developer then the opportunity to make adjustments to the plans before submission. And the fact that there's a human component here, guys, where you're seeing me face to face, instead of you just receiving one of the many plans that you have on your pile and now opening it up and now evaluating it. You're going to remember that you spoke to Thea or you spoke to Fernando and Jennifer, and she told you this is the idea, this is the vision, and everybody was in it together. I think that human component of it is also very important.
And then it makes sorry, Jen, go.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it makes me wonder, how is the City of Miami Gardens the archetype for how this should be happening, and the City of Miami and the City of Miami Beach isn't
It's a
doing
mess.
that.
And I think a lot of it has to do with politics for sure. And the city of Miami Gardens got their act together. Another city we just interviewed.
But Thea, I think there is a point here that you're making that is very important, and it kind of goes back to where you spoke about the desperation of trying to, and there are some cities that have gone through an incredible transformation, right? Miami Gardens went from changed their name from Carol City to Miami Gardens because they had it had a reputation, right? And now they have slowly come to this place where we have the ability to really transform.
They rebranded.
And then you have Formula One coming in, right? And injecting, and now it becomes kind of like the center of all the sports, in South Florida. And for years, when the Miami Dolphins would play and they were on national TV on Monday Night Football, people would say from South Beach instead of saying from Miami Gardens. Now they say from Miami Gardens, right? And so there is that there are cities that go through that as well. There's a desperation of, hey, there's an opportunity here and we have to take advantage of that. We have to actually lead the way. And so that's a big component. Yeah. When you have a city of Miami that has so much history, right? And sometimes they become entrenched in their own systems. They become entrenched in their own bureaucracy. It doesn't allow for that desperation to say, we have to move. And then you have that attitude of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We've always done it this way. Those are killers of innovation.
And again, that's where people we come in and we have to educate them. Like, you might not think it's broken because people are coming here, but it's broken. Like it doesn't work for most people. Yeah. And if you look at the cost, so I love telling them, by you keeping this building going through permitting for 18 months when it should have been 6, this is how much revenue you're losing and what you're costing them, and why so many restaurants end up going broke right after they open, right? Because they thought they were going to open in time for season, and next thing they open, they're opening in the dead of summer because of permitting delays.
So I think this is a very interesting pattern that we're unearthing, and it's been in the back of my head, so I was very excited to talk to you two about it. But I had Alvara Jane on a couple weeks ago, and we were discussing the city of Hialeah and how easy the city of Hialeah made things for Alvara to move forward with Factory Town.
That's right.
And I compared it to how the city of Miami was in the early 2000s under Manny Diaz. There is that moment in time where growth is welcomed and processes are made easy. And so I think what we need to do is have this dialogue and get these cities in some kind of forum to say, hey, this is dumb. What you're doing to the entrepreneurs, the businesses that drive growth in a city is dumb. Happy to say it.
And highlight the differences. We are seeing pockets of cities that are doing things right. Another one that we did, we went to a city spotlight that the Miami Association does a great job doing these city spotlights, and they highlight a city and what's going on and what they're doing, what developments are coming, if they have a built business improvement district, et cetera, and they bring everybody in. And they did one in Weston, and Weston talked, and this is the first time I'd ever heard of this by a city, at least in this state, was that the city of Weston has a third-party permitter, and they only get paid when the permit gets approved.
No, when the permit gets processed.
It gets processed.
So it's on the processing, so that you don't have these delays of, I haven't heard back, or the comments, we responded to the comments, but now I got to wait another 3 weeks, all those,
but
all
that
those
speeds
crazy
it
delays.
up, and it freed up all of their city people in building and zoning to now go out and do the inspections and do based on the permit being processed so much quicker. And they said the permits are processed within 3 to 5 days.
Okay, so I think we need a roundtable.
Yes.
Where we invite the cities within our county that are doing this right, and other cities that may not be doing it in the same way. And I think we need to have that conversation, because it's getting ridiculous Everybody loves the story of Wynwood. Everybody loves the story of these places that turned over, and everybody worked together so beautifully and in harmony, which we did. And that was only made possible because the city was a massive component of that. So I think we need to bring everyone out of their offices.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do that as a group.
Yeah, we've been talking about doing that with the Miami Association because of our RPAC. We have a very strong RPAC, so good connections there. And I know Fernando participated in one that just dealt with the issue of grease traps, right? Like we brought in all the people who deal with grease traps, and Fernando was there. And
it's a killer when a restaurateur has to go through a process that is 13 to 18 months long just to have a grease trap. I mean, it just destroys your assumptions when you're going into the investment, and it just you put everybody really behind the eight ball from the very beginning in an industry that is very competitive and very difficult.
And to your point, the heart and magic and life of any whether successful or just trying to ignite community,
it is a restaurant, and they couldn't make it more difficult. So I would like to ask them, how do they justify that period of time?
And that would be a great great question to get answered.
Yeah. Listen,
we should do that.
Let's be honest. A justification or an excuse, for lack of a better word, doesn't make it right. And so, but yeah, there are things and there are levers that need to be pulled in order to right that, for sure. And I think that's a big part of, when you have rapid growth in a city, and really what was accelerated through the pandemic, I think was a big component of them just not being ready.
Right.
And I think that they would admit that they were just not ready for all this growth to happen all at the same time. They also fell into from my perspective, they fell into new structures, new systems, new ways of doing things during the COVID time that they then did not want to give up, when things went back to normal. Right. And so one of the things that you mentioned about Avril Jane, who's amazing, and what happens in Hialeah is that it doesn't matter what happened the day before. You can always go at 8 a.m. to the Hialeah, planning and zoning department, put your name down, and before midday, you will speak to one of the inspectors or the head inspector.
Right.
They're getting it right. Right. And again,
and that is the fourth densest city in the state.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to hear about Miami's issue with how they did it with COVID. Right. They didn't do it.
Right. Correct.
Give me a break, Miami.
There is some good news, I think. I think building and zoning is probably going to be the last one to get there. But for the city of Miami, I have seen some great changes with tax collection. I've seen more innovation. I've seen more both at the county level and at the city level in terms of like websites. I mean, for example, registering my car now is a piece of cake. They send it to you with registration. You literally scan the QR code and pay. Before, you used to have to go in, you'd have to put in the number that came in the email. My number never showed up. I don't know why. So then I'd have to go in person to a tag. I'm like, this is archaic.
Right.
So I think changes are coming, but I agree with you, way too slow for what keeps the innovators innovating.
And for a city that flaunts its, restaurants worldwide, how many times a day do you hear the best restaurants in the world, the list of restaurants opening up, the whatever grade of restaurant is here? Well,
no doubt.
They couldn't kill them harder.
Right. And to celebrate the fact that for many, many years, we never had a Michelin star restaurant. And then all of a sudden, we've had an incredible recognition of these restaurants by a lot of our local chefs, and also chefs that have come into the city because they're excited by why it is happening. I'm curious about something, Thea. You mentioned this roadmap, transforming neighborhoods. Is there a formula as well, or would you say that it's a combination of science and art?
So I think that it's funny. In Alapata, I used that exact phraseology as the tagline. Alapata, part art, part science. because the art district was bleeding into it, and it is our science district. I don't know if you know that, but it is. It's our biotech district. So yes, look, I think that there is a roadmap, and the reason that I host my show is because there are commonalities between every single person I talk to and everything that I went through and everything other people go through in every phase of the process of going into these uncharted neighborhoods. And my hope is one day that it becomes so apparent that we can actually create this roadmap that may help, other people trying to do this. I spoke to the mayor of Cali, Colombia, a couple of weeks ago, and he is trying to restore the historical center of Cali. They are encountering the exact same issues as Wynwood had, as Alapata had. So the point of me talking to people is to show these issues are all the same. How do we streamline this? How do we share the information to turn these inner cities, industrial neighborhoods, bombed out parts of Detroit, derelict, neglected neighborhoods into, places we want to go?
You've lived in major cities around the world: London, Paris, New York,
Tokyo.
Tokyo. A lot of people have spoken for many, many years about Miami becoming more of a cosmopolitan city and the global city of the future. I wonder, aside from fixing the planning and zoning departments, what in your eyes, what are we missing to be that city, if anything at all? Would love your perspective on that.
Yeah, I don't think we're missing anything. Miami is the greatest love of my life. I've loved it in every phase that it's ever been in. I always resisted any comparisons to, we're going to be like, this part of New York City, or, there's a place like this somewhere else. And I would say, no, it's completely, you need to stop with invidious comparisons. It's completely unlike anywhere, certainly in this country or anywhere in the world. It is its own unique, spinning, superb planet. And it's not missing anything. It's just in an evolutionary phase. It's the most natural thing ever. And so we're just growing. And these are all just little growing pains in this magnificent paradise we get to call home.
I would say the only thing missing, and I agree with you 100%. I moved here. I never lived anywhere longer in my life than in Miami in the exact same house I bought. I lived 2 years maximum anywhere I've ever lived. I've been in my house 30 something years. So I love this place. I agree. I've seen all the changes. I was actually driving down 88th yesterday, and I'm like, I literally had the idea of like, oh my gosh, this has changed so much. Remember when that was a strawberry field? Remember when that was that, and we're continuing to see that. The only thing that I think we really need to be truly global, and it's something that people have been complaining about since I got here and they haven't fixed, is the quality of service. I feel like with very few exceptions, service is not where it needs to be something that's welcoming and happy and shows what we're about. I mean, we're warm. Everyone here, like I was in a business meeting the other day and this poor guy came from Ohio. Everybody who walked in the room was kissing, and he's like,
get off
he
me.
didn't know what to do. Like, he's like, I don't want to kiss you. I don't know you people. I'm like, oh, I don't know him either. That's how we say hello here. So, but our hospitality, like that's business, but it doesn't breed across through our restaurants and our hotels and our, our general everyday.
You're speaking to a level of professionalism and.
Correct.
Yeah, I think there's a polish that will come, and I'm going to predict that you don't like it when it arrives.
Yeah, it could be.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, it could be. Careful what you wish for kind of thing. I mean, I have no problem with it because I like it, but I hear that all the time. I heard that from somebody who just moved from Hong Kong, and she's amazing. She's got all these visions. She wants to build a Chinatown in Miami-Dade County. She's got all these beautiful, wonderful ideas, and she said,
I got to tell you, partner,
service is going to be an issue.
I'm with Thea. I like the rough edges of our city. I don't know. I don't know that I'm gonna really like it.
The last thing I would say is
No, that was
whatever
to your
anybody
global
thinks
question.
that we're missing, they need to not sit around saying we're missing it. They need to bring it.
They need to bring it. Agreed, 100%.
I wanted a cool place to go. I felt like I was on the edges. I had to make it.
I love that.
Tell us a little bit about Coconut Grove. I know that's your
I live
home
in
base.
Coconut Grove.
Yeah.
It's a spectacular paradise, another planet away from factory districts. Coconut Grove is also in a growth phase. I think it's like multi-billion dollars worth of real estate developed. I think Coconut Grove is Miami's Saint-Tropez. People want to compare. It is the south of France for America now because we have all the elements in place, the yacht clubs, the restaurants. The beauty of this place is breathtaking. And we also have infrastructure. We have parks and schools and safety. So, I think Coconut Grove is a very extremely special place right now, and it feels like a kind of 1950s town. There are very few places that somewhere in the CVS knows, hey Thea, the dry cleaner, hey Thea, it's a bit Turner show. So I love living here.
Yeah, I love the transformation that the Grove has been through recently, too. They've really done a great job keeping the scale and the vibe and everything still authentic to what Coconut Grove was while bringing the levels and the buildings and stuff up a little bit.
Hey,
and
Fernando, let me ask you, what do you think Miami's missing?
I would say something that would be, I think difficult to achieve is a modern transportation system. That would really 100%. Kick it up a notch. We haven't built a single, inch of additional rail lines. We did the Metro Mover in downtown Miami and it kind of just stuck in one area.
True.
And I think that would be very transformative for a city. I think that's the only thing that is missing that I could get from one place to another without using a car.
Mostly east-west.
Mostly east-west. I travel throughout the state. I've been using the Bright Line very regularly to go to Orlando, for example. We always say that it was built to connect Orlando to Miami, not the other way around. And I think I can prove it because the earliest train actually leaves from Orlando to Miami, and that I think should say something. But I find it wonderful. Number one, you're surrounded by people. I don't have to drive. I get to do other things. I get to exchange pleasantries, meet people. All of that I think would be wonderful. And I would love to be able to connect from the west to the east of the city without having to use a vehicle. So that I think is the only thing that would really be impactful.
So in closing, I know we said we weren't going to talk pizza, but there's no way that I can end it without talking pizza.
I don't know if you know, but we traveled, and every time we hear of a place, but we went to this great pizza place that is in a gas station in Jupiter? And it's this great story. He was a pizza maker in New York for 40 years. He's from Colombia. He decides to retire here in South Florida. He lives in Jupiter. He finds this little place in the back of a gas station. He asks the guy, would you rent it for me? I just want to put a couple of pizza oven. He makes his own water in his garage at home to make sure it is the right water to use for the pizza. And then he is like the soup Nazi from Seinfeld. He tells you what toppings he's going to put in the pizza. He says, I may open at 1, but if not, just wait for me. And
there's a line out as well.
There's a line out, and the pizza will be done when the pizza is done. But it is delicious, and the story just enhances it even more.
And I love that you had a pizza story. So,
yes,
deep dish or New York?
Oh, come on.
Oh my God, my own style, you guys. My own style. Haven't you got that yet? You haven't got that yet? It's thin. It's a hybrid. New York, you've got big and floppy and foldable.
Right.
Deep dish. No. It's just crispy. It's much more Neapolitan. I will tell you that I was the first woman on the cover of the National Industry Pizza magazine.
All right.
I can run and get it for you if you like. And that was a big moment for me. And the story is good. My pizza guy stopped showing up. And when you own a restaurant and you have the weight of a neighborhood on you, and a business and people's paychecks, you do what it takes. So within a couple of hours, I was the pizza chef. And I did it to tell the rest of the people that worked with me, anybody else doesn't want to show up, I'll do your job too. The Italians really laughed their asses off seeing me back there. They thought that was funny and absurd until the king of pizza making, he's probably the top pizza maker in the world, walked into my restaurant, Roberto Caparuschio. He walked in the restaurant. He told me, my daughter is going to be one of the greatest pizza chefs in the world. I know, I'm going to teach you how to do this. And he stood behind the line with me and I got pretty good. And so I do think pizza puts neighborhoods on the map. People will go anywhere for good pizza.
Favorite topping?
Well, I used to make one with an artichoke cream and artichokes and fior di latte, and that was something. Let me just go off in a reverie about my artichoke pizza. That was so good. No, I will tell you, I'm like very trad. I like tomato and good mozzarella.
Beautiful.
Good. Favorite pizza place in Miami?
Tough question. I don't know. You guys?
Yeah. I don't know. I always just go back to Willie's, which is why the other day I'm like, I'm not taking the Bright Line because then I can't stop at Willie's when we go up next week. I'm driving. I'm stopping at Willie's. They were closed last time I went.
Yeah, well, I might have to drive with you. As long as you're driving, we're good.
Yeah, is there anything we didn't ask you that you would like to share? Or
no, I worry that I talk too much. Like,
no,
is it too long? No. You can edit, obviously, whatever you need. Trim. No, look. I think you guys are really experts and you have amazing perspective. I hope that, all I did was compliment that. And I think we covered it. I mean, I hope you feel that we covered it. Thank you so much.
I can speak with you for hours, by the way. So we really appreciate your time.
We'll do it again. We'll do something else. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, it is our pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for joining us and for listening in, for sharing your comments and sharing this podcast with the world. We really, really appreciate you. We love this city, and I love everything that Thea said. And we are not missing a single thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna say, to counterbalance Jennifer's point of view, I'm okay with the rough edges of our city. I love it. So.
You have to go to what the question was. The question was to be a global city. I agree with you.
I'm sorry, Jennifer. We are out of time. And out of respect for our editor.
leave your pizza, your favorite pizza, on the comments.
Yeah. There you go.
Pizza restaurant.
I love it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much, Thea. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.